Welcome to Hatman Strikes Back Daily Boxing News. So Ben Whittaker returns to action on Saturday, November 29th at the National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham against obscure German fighter Benjamin Gavazi. Let's talk about it. Now, obviously Ben Whittaker is still only 9-1 or 9-0-1, that one being a technical decision to Liam Cameron in the first fight. So he's inexperienced as a pro, that's my point. However, he's 28 years of age. This is a guy pushing 30, and it's not like he didn't have a vast amateur background, because he did. This is a guy who was an Olympian, so you can't afford to move Ben Whittaker as slowly as, let's say, a Moses Itama. You just can't, because of his age. And really and truly, you shouldn't need to, given the amateur background. But they are, at least for his first fight with Matchroom, as I say, taking on this obscure German opponent who, at least on paper, would appear to be a bit of a soft touch. Now, I'm not saying he necessarily and definitively is a soft touch. Sometimes these obscure fighters can turn out to be better than you expect. But for whatever it's worth, this Benjamin Gavazi guy has fought exclusively in Germany, save for, I think, 2 fights where he fought outside of Germany. Other than that, he's been in Germany the whole time. He's been fighting at light heavyweight the whole time. He lost his pro debut. Since then, he's remained undefeated against fellow obscure fighters. Right? This guy hasn't been fighting a who's who. In fact, I don't recognize any of the names on his record at all. Maybe some of you guys might, especially if you're into German boxing. I can't imagine there'll be too many of you at this stage. Obviously, a few years ago, German boxing was quite hot, or boxing in Germany was quite hot. Maybe a decade ago or something during the Klitschko era, but, well, it's longer than that now. But these days, no, Germany ain't where it's at anymore as far as professional boxing. So, yeah, Ben Whittaker taking on this obscure German fighter. Why? Why not somebody that we know, like a Dan Aziz or a Craig Richards? Why is it this Benjamin Gavazi guy? I suspect, and I've got no proof for this, it's pure speculation on my part, I suspect that a condition of Ben Whittaker signing with Matchroom was that he got to pick the first opponent, and that it could be an obscure German guy. That's my suspicion. I think that he and his team, maybe management or whatever, wanted a little run out to maybe get Ben Whittaker's confidence where it needs to be. And that sounds strange when you consider the fact that Ben Whittaker is still undefeated and he's coming off not only a win, but a stoppage win. He stopped Liam Cameron in 2 rounds in a rematch. So why would he need a confidence builder? It's not like he's coming off a real long layoff. No, it's 7 months. At his age, 7 months shouldn't be such a big deal, right? You shouldn't be that rusty coming off a 7-month layoff. I'm not aware of him being injured after the Liam Cameron rematch. So what is it? Well, after the first Liam Cameron fight, I, in at least one video, might have been several, expressed some concerns about Ben Whittaker's mentality. Because that first fight with Liam Cameron wasn't exactly the thriller in Manila, was it? It was a pretty mundane affair. Neither guy got hit with any real damaging shots. There were no knockdowns in the fight. It wasn't at any point a life or death struggle for either man, at least from the outside looking in. The only real part of the fight that was in any way interesting, I mean, look, you could see that Ben Whittaker was uncomfortable in there, and you could see that he was maybe gassing a little bit. So you thought, okay, down the stretch, could this get intriguing? But that was based on, what you expected might happen or what you thought could possibly happen, rather than what actually did happen. What did happen, as I say, was a pretty mundane fight where you got this WWE moment where Ben Whittaker pulls Liam Cameron over the ropes, and then there's all this stuff about, oh, my ankle, my back, I can't continue on in the fight. And so after watching that and after seeing Ben Whittaker's reaction, the way he behaved in the aftermath of that, I had questions about his mentality, because he, in the run-up to the rematch, talked about finding Jesus, and he was talking all this Jesus stuff. Now, I've got no issue with anyone turning to religion. What I'm saying is, normally, a professional fighter might turn to Jesus after a potentially career-ending injury, or if they've been in a Thriller in Manila type fight where they literally felt like they could die or get seriously injured in the fight, or maybe they've been through some horrific stuff in their personal life. Danny Jacobs, for example, was diagnosed with very serious cancer, a massive tumor on his back, which he survived and came back from. Vinny Pazienza back in the days broke his neck and somehow miraculously made it back into boxing. If you were coming back from something like that, I could totally understand turning to Jesus and giving yourself to Christ and all this kind of business. I can understand why there'd be that type of dramatic change in your personality coming back from something that traumatic. But I'm not aware of Ben Whittaker coming back from anything like that post Liam Cameron won. It appeared to be a pretty mundane fight, and unless it's something in his personal life, then he appears to have been so traumatized by that first Liam Cameron fight that he's like turned to Jesus. Again, no issue with people turning to Jesus per se. It's just, it seems a bit melodramatic. That's the point I'm making. Ben Whittaker seems to me a little bit neurotic. Situations which to many other fighters, or at least fighters who are going places or have gone places, which aren't that serious, aren't that deep, to Ben Whittaker it seems like the end of the world. That's the way it appears to be as an outsider looking in. If that first Liam Cameron fight is what triggered all this turning to Jesus stuff for Ben Whittaker, then he might not be cut out for professional boxing, because by pro boxing standards, particularly at the higher levels, what Ben Whittaker went through in that first fight, that's not that deep, bro. See, a lot of these guys who have athleticism, like Ben Whittaker does, and talent, but lack the intestinal fortitude, they can get away with that to a large extent in the unpaid ranks, in the amateur code. Because in amateur boxing, it's only 3 rounds. The fights are not as tough because the gloves are different, the rules are different, the rules are different. The referees are a lot more protective of the fighters in amateur boxing. So like I say, if you're a style over substance, flashy, pretty boy type that doesn't really have the cojones for professional boxing, you can get away with it in amateur boxing, even at a very high level. Yeah? You look up Vladimir Klitschko, he was dominating in the super heavyweight division for years in the amateurs. Nobody was able to test his heart. It wasn't until he turned pro with the, obviously, higher number of rounds in professional boxing, that people were finally able to get to him. So it remains to be seen whether Ben Whittaker is cut out for this pro game or not. But I have my concerns, okay? Because that first Liam Cameron fight weren't so rough that you would need to make this dramatic change to your mindset and your lifestyle and turn to Jesus and all these tears. Like, it's not that deep, bro. So we will see. And I say all that to, again, speculate that this obscure opponent that Ben Whittaker's coming back against, I suspect this was Ben Whittaker's idea. That it was a condition of him signing with Eddie Hearn that he got to fight some obscure guy like this for his first contest. Again, he is only 9-0-1, right? If he was 20 years of age, I wouldn't be making this video. I'd be saying, okay, whatever. They're continuing to build a 20-year-old. But no, he's 28 years of age, pushing 30. And it's not like he doesn't have an extensive amateur background. He does. Like, they're going to need to get a move on. Do you know what I mean? And so, why are they fighting this guy coming back from the Liam Cameron revenge victory? You know, first fight was a technical decision. Second fight, TKO victory for Ben Whittaker in the second round. Why come back against this guy? What does this tell us about Ben Whittaker? Now, it might be Eddie Hearn that's behind it. I suspect not, though. I suspect not. Just my thoughts. Give me your thoughts in the comment section below. Now, in closing, I have been on YouTube and looked at a couple of this guy's fights. Benjamin Gavazi, he appears to be, I guess, somewhat competent, but very basic. Will he be able to cause Liam Cameron any problems? Well, he's only lost the one fight, and that was back in 2018. Since then, he's had, he's 20 fights deep now. So that's quite a decent number of fights to have in the space of, 7 years? It's okay. So he'll be confident coming into the bout, I would imagine, especially looking at that first Liam Cameron fight. Maybe looking at some of the stuff that I've been highlighting in this video. You know what I mean? The melodramatic, almost neurotic nature of Ben Whittaker. So we'll see. Let me know what you guys think about all this in the comment section below. Am I reading it wrong? Am I being too harsh on Ben Whittaker here? Saying that he's maybe a bit neurotic and going overboard as far as his reaction to that first Liam Cameron fight? Or am I onto something here? Now, fighters can get tougher mentally. That can happen, especially if the will is there and the fighter's willing to go to those dark places and push themselves and face their fears. They can get tougher mentally. It happens. But it tends to happen normally when fighters, or just people in general, are younger, when their neuroplasticity is greater. That's when they tend to have the greater ability to change dramatically. Ben Whittaker, like I keep saying, is 28. Is he going to change that much in terms of his core personality at this age, or at least a core aspect of his personality at this age? It's questionable. An example of somebody who did ostensibly manage to do that would be Larry Holmes. The late Costamato spoke about what an anomaly Larry Holmes was, because Holmes in the amateurs apparently had a reputation for not being that brave. And Costamato, I'm paraphrasing him here, said words to the effect of, Larry Holmes is the only fighter he's ever seen, or one of the few fighters, should I say, one of the few fighters he's ever seen, and obviously he was vastly experienced as a trainer, one of the few fighters he's ever seen who went from being basically scared and somewhat cowardly in the amateurs to being extremely brave in the pros. And he did that at quite a late age. I mean, Larry Holmes fought for the heavyweight title against Ken Norton when he was maybe about Ben Whittaker's age, 28, 29, something like that. He was pretty old at that stage. So, yeah, there are some fighters later on in their careers who can find heart and whatnot, but they tend to be younger. Let's see if Ben Whittaker can be more like Larry Holmes rather than Audley Harrison. So, again, I'm not writing Ben Whittaker off here. I'm not saying he can't become a world champion at some stage and be very successful. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just asking some questions and raising a few concerns that I have. Yeah? From a commercial perspective, obviously, the more successful he is, the more money he's going to make. But in Matchroom hands, even without being that successful as far as titles won, he's probably going to still make a load of money for a fighter of his level, right? But, we will see. Time will tell whether he's got the intestinal fortitude to make it at the top as a legitimate world champion. The light heavyweight landscape is going to change because right now you got Bivol and Beterbiev, even Benavidez at the top. Benavidez is going to be around for a while longer. I don't think Bivol and Beterbiev are going to be around for much longer though. So I think the division will open up and opportunities will present themselves for the likes of Ben Whittaker. So yeah, I just wanted to do this video here off the top of the dome. My thoughts on Ben Whittaker and his next opponent, Benjamin Gavazi. Let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments. Don't forget to like and share this video, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out.